of view that in the last 20 minutes or so, they did seem to have sorted out their defence, the goal line defence, despite the Jackson Hastings thing, which is stupidity. Overall in the game, the discipline with the ball and without the ball from Wigan was much better. Huddersfield blew an opportunity here though to pick up a win, and now they find themselves second bottom. So yeah, they'll be disappointed with that.
Yeah.
People might want us to touch on the forward pass that Sky were desperately trying to talk out of being a forward pass late on in the game when Ashton Goulding threw a forward pass to put Senior through, but it was rightly called back. No one, because we didn't get many fan views, no one's mentioned that it looked like there was a knock-on in the build-up to the Cudjoe try from Ashwell Bott, who was battered and bruised in this game. I mean, he eventually had to go off, but I think I couldn't believe that he stayed on as long as he did. He got clattered a few times and showed his toughness, because he's not, we're talking about there's not much to Artur Morg, there's even less to Ollie Ashwell Bott.
Yeah. And he's still a relatively young player, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean, we talked about Owen Buckley before, someone who seems like he's been around for a good few years but not played many games. Definitely throw Ashwell Bott into that camp. But yeah, Will Price came on again for Huddersfield. Didn't really make much impact. They put him on the wing to replace Ashwell Bott. They didn't move him into the halfbacks until much later on, which was surprising given Sam Wood had demonstrated that he's a perfectly usable player in this competition, but he's not a halfback.
Yeah.
Wigan waited a long time to bring Brad O'Neill on as well, actually, the young hooker, and when he came on, enforced by the head injury to Sam Powell, when he did come on, he looked sprightly. He had a couple of darts out of dummy half that brought, I think, 10, 12, maybe more meters a time. So look for him to get more game time. I think I would like to see him get a bit more game time next time around. But I would also love Tony Clubb and Joe Bullock to get more game time, in that they're just not earning their wages playing 14-minute stints twice in a game. But there you go. Kai Pearce-Paul was the man of the match in the stadium and on the TV coverage. And I think it's just because there's something different about him. He just jumps out of the screen, and it is quite exciting. But we've talked a bit about him the last few weeks, so I won't go over that too much. But yeah, excitement there for sure.
Yeah. Did you see the story about Singleton playing despite his wife being ready to give birth? Then went to the hospital, watched the England match on the TV, and then out popped the baby. Yeah,
I did see that, and he made it in time. So I mean, we bloody needed him, to be honest, to play some minutes. He was our only experienced prop forward who could play any minutes of any note. So well done to him, and congratulations to him and his wife on their little baby.
Yep. And then it was. Oh, 1 second, I am there really. Yeah. So then it was Castleford against Salford, which at half time was already 22 points to 6 to Salford, and finished 70 points to 18 to Salford, refereed by Tom Grant. In terms of stats, Salford made over 1,500 metres at over 9 metres per carry average gain. Cass made 702 fewer metres and had 47 fewer carries than their visitors. Individually, for Salford, Rhys Williams with 2 tries and 172 metres, Josh Johnson with 135 metres, Ken Sear with 1 try and 130 metres, and Dan Norman with 1 try and 127 metres. For the losing Castleford, Lewis Bienick was the only player of note with his 41 tackles.
And from the disciplinary, Paulie was the only player of note with a caution for a shoulder charge. What's he doing throwing his shoulders around in a game like this?
Yeah, when you win 70 points to 18, you don't need any shoulder charges around at all, do you?
No, not at all. The first fan view came in from Always in Our Shadow, and she said, total contempt for the sport, just default and take 24-0. If you're not playing, be honest.
Yep. At Mike Webb 58 said, I suppose Wembley will tell us which is the best approach, playing and being match or rain hardened against having a 3-week holiday.
And, well, Saints had already had their 3-week holiday, hadn't they? Neil Ormston said the credibility, and so none of these are fan reviews on the actual match. Neil said the credibility and viability of Super League in 2021 is surely in question now. Weakened teams the week before Wembley are common. I saw Wire concede 60 at London before we won in 2012. And I've called for teams to fulfil games with the kids if needed. But we seem to have a set of circumstances now where teams are unable or unwilling to risk players due to head knock rules and COVID. This isn't sustainable and needs addressing urgently.
Yeah, so it's, like we've already said, it's a really tough one, isn't it? What do you do? Because the last thing you want to do is play your best players, them get a head knock or pick up a suspension or anything else.
Or an injury.
Yeah. But was it 5 debutants and then Carrie, who's played once?
Yeah, 5 debutants, and I must admit, a couple of those, I've never even heard of Jack Sadler or Callum Jordan. I'd never heard of the two guys that rocked up there. Brad Martin and Carrie are very much at the start of their careers, aren't they? Tyler Heppy's a championship player. Sam Hall, I think, has only ever played once before, maybe twice. Another young player who was in the squad as well for this one. So, yeah, very inexperienced side, wasn't it, for Cass?
Yeah. I would like. You feel that teams should have something in between. I'm just thinking about like when before we've been to Cup finals. Yes, we've played maybe not a first choice 17, but somewhere close to it, because you don't want to be chopping and changing, and surely you should have players out there or within your squad who maybe wouldn't make the 17 at Wembley, but not 5 debutants.
Yeah, I suppose one of the differences here was Saints were playing on this Friday night, so that gives a bit more time for anyone to recover. And if someone had failed head protocols, they would have been cleared to play by the Saturday, whereas Cass were playing on the Sunday. So a little bit different. Cass last time you were on, Sarah, we sat and read through all of the things that Cass was saying were reasons why they couldn't play a match. And so, those lingering injuries must be about somewhere. It's amazing that none of the Saints players have those injuries that kept them out of the England game, but could play the week before Wembley. So
I think they must have got the Leeds physio joining them recently then.
But I think everyone's being compromised is the point I'm making there with that, with one way or another, either pulling people out of certain squads or from certain matches or what have you. And it remains to be seen if we'll talk a bit later if this leaves Cass undercooked. But the people who should be most dissatisfied with this is probably Leigh fans.
Yes.
Not only does it give Salford that boost on the table, that puts them pretty much out of reach now, I would say, for Leigh. But the points difference salvation that Salford have managed to generate from this win as well is huge.
Yeah, I mean, it's not without totally disrespecting Salford, it's not a scoreline that I imagine many Salford fans will have thought that they would get against anybody.
Yep.
If at the start of the season you look down who you're playing, they're not going to think Castleford at Castleford, that's a win. Or, it's not going to be one that you mark off as that's a pretty much give me. And you're certainly not going to look at it and think we're going to win by 50 points there.
No.
So I think it's a big result for them, isn't it?
Definitely. I mean, some of the tries were embarrassingly easy. I feel like I would have had a chance of scoring some of the Morgan Escaray, one of the 2 Morgan Escaray tries. They were that much walk-ins. I'm not sure there wasn't a sniff of in what's the word I'm looking for? Crossing, but the other word for it. Obstruction for one of them. But it wouldn't have made a difference at the end of the day, would it? Let's face it.
No.
But yeah, Castig managed to get some game time in for Grant Millington, who you'd expect to be playing next week, who's needed some game time. But
I think you'd question, what does a team gain from playing the match in that way? And okay, so Grant Millington got some match time, but other than that, it is the only thing that you can take from it. Well, we've not picked up any suspensions or ruled anyone out with injuries, and if that is sort of the best positive you can take from it, then it's a bit sad, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a bit sad for these kids on debut to get such a pummeling. Wigan had a game where they had to throw in a couple of debutants a few years ago when they were struggling for numbers, and they got a butchering at Wakefield, and it's a shame that's your first moment, you one you want to talk about and remember, but
yeah.
They're not going to forget it, are they? But I'm sure there's lots more to come from some of these kids, so
yeah, you'd like to think so, wouldn't you?
So that's the other thing they can take from it, I suppose, that these kids will learn from adversity.
And hopefully the players that were picked are strong enough that it won't affect them negatively.
Yeah. And it's, and it does sort of, Neil touched on it, but this throwing in the kids to just fulfill games, whether that is a viable strategy, it does make that a little bit questionable, but I don't have anything more to say about this one. Salford's season is probably safe.
Yeah.
We did get a comment from Neil Ormston about the Hull KR versus Warrington game that was called off. He said, after a year of games with no fans, it seems the rules now permit fans, but no games. Next time someone wants to slam the RFL for ineptitude, sit back and think, what would the government do? Do you want to take us through the standings, Sarah?
Yeah, so Catalans are top with 91%, with St Helens trailing on 83%, ahead of Warrington on 73% and Hull FC on 68%. Wigan, now that they've played a game, are back up to 5th on 61%, overtaking
Won a game.
Hull.
We've been playing all our games.
Yeah, sorry, they've actually managed to, as opposed to Rovers who have just sat there merrily and waited for teams around them to lose.
Next week when we play Huddersfield, assuming it goes ahead on Friday night, we'll then be the only team that's played every fixture.
You've jinxed it now, haven't you, Mark?
So we'll see what happens. Well, there's inevitably going to be other ones missed, Sarah. We've missed 12 games in the last 6 weeks, haven't we? So
yeah.
And it's not getting any better.
No. So Wigan are back up to 5th on 61%, overtaking Hull KR, who have 60%. Leeds, outside the top 6, have 50%. Cass have 42%. Wakefield are on 30%, with Salford climbing to 10th on 25%, leapfrogging Huddersfield, who have 23%. Lee stay bottom and are winless.
Stat line of the week probably would have to come from the Wigan Huddersfield game, wouldn't it? Because that was where there was the most impressive numbers. It's probably between Hastings with 214 metres and Pete's with 61 tackles, isn't it? Although, let's not knock Farrell and Yates for their both ways efforts as well.
Yeah, I think, it's between them really, isn't it? There's not a lot. Well, there wasn't a lot else of rugby played, really, was there?
No. It's difficult for me to pull out a player of the week as well, because I don't really think anyone stood up that much in any of the games to be that exceptional. Let's say James Maloney on his 300th career appearance, turning that game around in the second half for Catalans, even though very chatty Luke Gale did have a bit of a point about he always does that in terms of hitting people high. And Alan Walker was one of the first people who pointed us in that direction over many years of NRL fan reviews. So he'll know that Gale was talking sense on that at least.
Yeah. No. Yes.
Highlight of the week, I'm going to stick with that that in his senior try, the Wakey Dynamo with his levitation skills.
Yeah. I don't feel like I saw enough rugby to have anything resembling a highlight of the week, I'm afraid.
No, we are in that weird malaise with things